Christians, it's also not part of
Yeah.
our culture to put ourselves forward. So we've got, sort of the double things. I suppose as Christians, though, we know it is the Lord that will that oversees it. So nothing's going to be outside of his control. But there is something that we need to step up to still. It doesn't mean that we sit back. And even just learning to do that in a different culture or different cultures is actually tricky, because you're just thinking, well, am I kind of like bragging or boasting? I
Yeah.
need to put my but I've also learned over the years, Tommy, and we've seen this even with just leaders in whatever organizations, that it's not necessarily about whether you're good or not good, but actually the gifts, and therefore putting yourself forward and leaning in, as Sheryl Sandberg would call it, leaning in and actually
Yeah.
putting yourself forward. We have to do that, don't we?
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Up Next. Today, I get a chance to talk with Dr. Felicia Wong. Felicia, how are you, and where do we find you today?
Hi, Tommy. It's such a pleasure to be here with you today. And I'm actually calling in from London, UK.
Now, were you born and raised in London?
Yes, that's right. Well, actually, I was born in Birmingham in the UK, but I moved down to London with my parents when I was just under a year old. So really, I'm a Londoner. That's
Yeah.
right.
Now, for somebody who's only been to London only twice in my entire life, and for those who have never been to London, how would you describe your city?
Oh, I would say, I used to say that London was the best place in the world, but now I realize there's a lot of excellent places in the world. But it's a very good place in that it's vibrant, it's very multicultural. You can find pretty much all kinds of cuisine, hear all kinds of languages. It's very global. So it's actually lovely. Yes, I do like
Yeah.
London a lot.
Now, you and your husband are Malaysian, is that correct?
Well, actually, my mother was originally from Malaysia and my father from Singapore, but my husband is from Malaysia.
Yeah, yeah. Now, for you, a lot of times when it comes to food, are you more of a person who likes Singaporean food, Malaysian food, or is there a distinct culture of food in London?
No, you're absolutely right. When it comes to kind of Asian type foods, it definitely is Chinese food. I often say to my friends, if you were stuck on a desert island and could only choose one cuisine for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Yeah,
And for me, it's Chinese food, and that includes Singapore, Malaysian, etc.
very, very good. Felicia, talk to me a little bit about your journey. Before we talk about what you're doing right now, talk to me a little bit about your career.
Okay, thank you, Tommy. Well, I trained as a medical doctor, so I'm actually a general practitioner, is what we call it here in the UK, but also known as a family doctor or family practitioner in other parts of the world. And let's be honest, being Asian, my parents had decided, I'm the eldest of four, and they had
Yeah,
decided when I was born that that was what I was going to be, a medical doctor.
yeah,
Um, Having said that, I'm very grateful for the fact that I am a doctor, because there is so much one can do to help and care for others and actually really make a difference. And also, it is a very good profession, of course. So, as a medical doctor, that's kind of where I came to be, and I've pretty much lived and worked in London all my life, actually, with a couple of years just in Canada for a
yeah.
change, but otherwise here.
Yeah. And Felicia, a lot of times, wouldn't you say, like for me, when I graduated from high school back in 1995, it was also doctor, lawyer, engineer with the preference engineering or doctor. Especially for Asians, it
Yes.
was the one that gave you the most income, but the safest, even though it was one of the hardest. And so a lot of times that's what my parents always wanted us to focus on.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Tommy. And that was the main reason. And actually, there's very good reason for that. It's because they said, look, we never want you to be without a job. We never want you not to be able to stand on your own 2 feet. So they often, for all of us, they would encourage us to go into a profession
Yeah.
where we can actually do good work. Yes, absolutely. So
Yeah.
it was for us, it was doctor, lawyer, and accountant was
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
much,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes.
And when my parents immigrated here to the United States in 1972, my dad had to work at a restaurant. My mom was a high school teacher in Hong Kong, but it didn't transfer through, so she couldn't get a job. And
No.
so a lot of the times they had to start from the beginning at a restaurant as a teacher aide, all of that stuff. Their English wasn't the best.
Mhm.
So they realized that you had education was going to open doors. And so for
Mm.
them, it was always an emphasis for us growing up on education.
Yeah, absolutely, Tommy. Even at the time when they came, so my father came to study law, my mother nursing. So she was a midwife, but it was very much that they came to make a better life for us so that we would have education that meant that we always had a profession and a standing
Yeah.
in society.
Now, are you still working as a professional doctor today, or what are you doing now?
Yes, I am. So I am still working as a medical doctor, as a GP, but actually, my main job now is with Christian Medical Fellowship, which is a Christian organization that equips and unites Christian doctors and nurses to live and speak for Jesus Christ. And I've been with that organization, which is my main job, for the last coming up to 8 years now.
Very good. Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about what the organization does.
Yes, well, it's wonderful actually, and we pretty much have a similar organization in most countries in the world. There is definitely one in most of the states in the United States as well. But it is a matter of integrating faith and work, but particularly in the nursing and the medical professions. So it's kind of thinking about how do we make a difference where we work for Jesus? How do we
Mhm.
witness to colleagues and patients? How do we speak truth and justice into those areas? And of course, we're all aware of the very great ethical issues that are always around, particularly to do with sanctity of life, beginning of life, end of life, and gender as
Yeah.
well. So, plenty of good things.
Now, Felicia, a lot of times, are you working with just the area doctors, nurses, and medical professions in London or Europe, or are you also providing scholarships in Africa and different places like that?
Oh, yes. So, ours is focus on the UK. However, we do have a global department where we are focused on primarily doctors and nurses from the UK who go to other countries, who work in other countries, but also, of course, we have very much an outreach. So, for instance, we've had programs for students and for young junior doctors of from other countries who can actually come to show us what things are like in their country and for us to learn
Yeah.
from each other. Yeah, so we do
Yeah.
have training programs.
What made you decide to 8 years ago? What made you decide to work for them?
Well, Tommy, it's going to be the same for most of us, isn't it? It's the Lord put it on my heart. So, as a medic, and also having had some excellent training in Bible study and Bible foundation, and sort of working in church, as in, serving in church, I really had that heart to say, well, how can I integrate them both? In terms of my profession as well as the Christian side of things. And Christian Medical Fellowship, which is a member organization of which I have been a member since I was a student, was very much a way to bring those two together. So I didn't actually know what the role was going to be like until I actually did it, but
Yeah.
it's been quite an amazing journey.
Yeah. Fully. What is your role there?
So I was up till just last week head of conferences and equipping, which was about conferences, events, and training and development of Christian doctors and nurses. But since this week, I've stepped up to be Deputy CEO of Christian Medical Fellowship UK. So I'm very thankful to the Lord for a new role to shape and to be challenged and grow.
Yes. Congratulations. I did
Thank
not
you.
realize that. Congratulations.
Thank you, Tommy.
Now, you're overseeing conferences before that, and I'm sure you're going to have elements of that. What does this new role, what changes? What was some of the things that you're going to have to do in this new role?
Yeah, so I will obviously be much more assisting and supporting the CEO in some of those
Mhm.
more strategic sort of high level decisions, strategy, budget, sort of the vision for the future. But also something that's really dear to my heart that I've learned over the last few years, Tommy, is about organizational health and development of the and cultural development within and outside the organization. So that idea about how can we actually be a more Christ-centered culture even as Christians within our organization with the values that we hold, and how does that show in the way that we live out those
Yeah.
values and do our work? So I'm really excited about that, actually.
Felicia, do you find, especially in the medical professional in London, they do understand the faith and work, and you're just there to gather, to find speakers, to encourage them? Or do you feel like you have to really help them start the basics and understand the basic foundations?
Oh, Tommy, that is such an excellent question because before I started working for this organization, I did not understand about the integration of faith and work because I had been brought up in churches that had said, actually, you as a Christian go to work in order to evangelize and to give money to gospel ministry.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
it's only actually since working for this organization that I understood actually that where we are called to be, wherever God has put us, is our ministry, that actually that is gospel
yeah,
ministry. And there's so much difference that we can make in addition to witnessing. So, in answer to
yeah,
your question, no, I think that actually most of us, many Christians I've come across, especially in my evangelical church circles, actually don't understand that there is that sacred secular divide, that
yeah.
division, and that integration of faith and work isn't there. And that makes a huge difference as to how we do our work and what we think we're there for.
Yeah, yeah. Because Felicia, the worst advice I could probably give you as a medical professional is, all right, here's what you need to do. Go find your patient and then find some way to slip in Jesus in there and share the gospel.
Yeah.
Versus to that nurse, you are going to be that first person the family and the patient engages when they get bad news. I need you to come alongside with them, help them understand, use the excellence of your work, and make sure their stay is wonderful and be able to listen to them. Those are
Mm.
two different things, but it's a
Mm.
different concept.
Yeah, it's so true, Tommy. And it's so sad when that happens, when people don't realize that they haven't actually got the full idea. Because once I slowly realized it and the Lord opened my eyes, that's why I'm passionate about talking about it. It really helped me to see, gosh, there's so many things we can do. We can make good work, like you were saying. We can model godly character. We can be a mouthpiece for truth and justice. We can mold culture, and we can be a messenger of the gospel. There are so many good things that we can be doing that make a difference to show that we belong to Jesus.
Yeah, yeah. So for your events and conferences, is it one big conference a year? Is it small little gatherings? Is it industry groups? Is it doctors here, nurses here? What does that look like for you guys?
Mm. So we have a flagship conference once a year, which is the national conference. We have nearly 500 doctors, nurses, midwives, Christians in healthcare with their families who come and gather in a particular conference center for a weekend.
Oh,
And then we
good.
have a main speaker with Bible talks and a variety of seminars about what it looks like to be a Christian doctor or nurse in the workplace. And then in addition to that, we also have a resident doctors, which is, I don't know what you call it in other countries, but junior doctors who haven't got to
Yeah,
consultant level yet. So we actually have one for them, again, a residential conference once a year, about sort of 150 to 200. Which is specific for junior doctors because there are different challenges at that
yeah,
level. And we also have, in addition, you're absolutely right, regional, so throughout the UK, in different parts, sort of regional conferences or gatherings. It could be breakfast meetings, it could be day conferences, to gather people together and integrated across all specialties.
yeah,
And we also have specialty networks like psychiatry
yeah,
or
yeah.
women's health. Or sort of pediatrics or something, where we talk specifically, because of course, Tommy, we can make a difference in the colleges that we belong to, and we can shape the policies that come out of that if we gather as a specialty. So it's really
Yeah.
exciting.
Very good. Very, very good. Did you ever think you would be, when you start your medical profession, or even when you were a young teenager, did you think you would be running conferences? Is that something you really enjoyed in the past?
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. I was a run of a mill, normal medical practitioner. Public speaking was the worst nightmare I had. So no, I just did not. I am in a different place than I could have ever foreseen because God has put me here. But no, not at all. I've learned so much in the last eight
Yeah.
years by working at this organization. And God has shown me gifts that He's brought out at the right time for me
Yeah.
through really good mentors and coaches.
Yeah. Felicia, I bet you in medical school, just like learned in seminary, you don't learn how to run an organization. You don't learn how to work with teams, all of those things. What were some of the things that you had to learn as you started overseeing teams and conferences, events, and now an organization?
Yeah, so it was just even about. So in medicine, of course, we do have teamwork, but it's kind of slightly different. Everyone's got a different role. I'm learning much more about team culture and what I mentioned, organizational health, like actually getting, well, as Jim Collins talks about,
Yeah.
getting the right people on the right seats on the right bus. That idea about where are you heading, where is the vision, how do you get people on board, a lot of leadership kind of skills as well, but also in terms of what are we doing when we put on, let's say, an event? What is our main goal? How are we glorifying Jesus? How are we equipping people? So actually, it's just been a whole idea of sort of corporate working as well as equipping and training and development and all the things that we need to know. So I don't even know where to start, Tommy, but that's just a little nugget.
Yeah. What is the one thing you've really enjoyed as you've overseen this conference and now this organization? What is the one thing you realize I don't enjoy doing?
I think that I don't enjoy doing. I think that if I realize, when you realize what your strengths are, but you also realize your weaknesses.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And but what you're very thankful for is for people who do have those strengths, and
Correct.
therefore how
Correct.
you can all work differently. I think that sometimes if I get bogged down in too much detail, I like a bigger picture overview and where the detail matters. But if there's a lot of detail that bogs you down, let's say with conference organizing, there can be little to and fro picky bits, and you have to kind of prioritize actually what little detail will make a big difference and what
Yeah.
doesn't really matter. So those kind of things, aren't life-giving for me, but are necessary.
Yeah. Felicia, I realized for me as the organization got bigger, the one thing I just did not enjoy doing is having so many people report to me. Then you got to sit there and meet with them weekly. Then you got to work on progress reports, performance reports, all that stuff. And I
Yeah,
realized, man, I just don't enjoy doing that. So I have 4 or 5 people who just report to me so
yes,
that I could work with those guys. And some people love working with other people.
yeah.
I actually intend to be introvert. I actually like just having my to-do list down and just getting all those things done.
Oh, well, that's great. And isn't it so good when we know what we particularly
Mhm.
flourish in?
And you got to be okay with that. You got to be secure with that versus trying to be good at everything.
Yeah, it can't be all things to all people. And also, God didn't make us that way. He gave us
Yeah.
different gifts and different personalities so that we could work in a team together. I'm learning that more and more, Tommy. I see that, yes.
Felicia, when you oversee all your events and conferences, was there a mistake or lesson that you had to learn that really shaped how you did future events in the past? And here's my example. I
Mhm.
did college ministry, man, about 15, 20 years ago. Basic mistake. I brought in a speaker. It was 9/11, and I thought for the college students, we will have a speaker from a firefighter from 9/11 who will come and share his story.
Yeah.
And all the students were excited. We had over 200 students there, and he started speaking and he started sharing. And I realized he was never in New York as a firefighter.
Oh,
And I have brought him in without double checking. That
oh,
was the most basic, important lesson that I ever learned, Felicia.
oh, wow, wow. And yeah, and how humbling, Tommy, that you're willing to tell us about that as well. Uh, thank you. I would say probably that I've realized more and more because sometimes as medical practitioners or as the kind of personality that we are, we can be very kind of like, this is my bit, I need to control it, I need to get it just right. And I think I've
Yeah,
really learned that actually working in a team means bringing different people along with you and listening to different views. And we all learn this about
yeah.
teams, but it's hard to do, isn't it, when people are different from you or their views are different. But to actually see that this is the diversity God brings, and therefore to be willing to listen and take on board other people's ideas and not just to have it the way that I would want it, because
Yeah.
that brings greater joy for others as well.
Okay, then let me ask you a quick
Yeah.
question. How have you navigated when you're in the team with 5 or 6 different people and everyone has different opinions? And now you got to make a decision. How do you navigate through that?
I think it's definitely listening and hearing to what people have to say and taking the bits that you think could work and actually but still being able to communicate to that person or to the people, actually I like what you said, or maybe it won't work this time. It's as often people say, it's not actually what you say, it's how you say it, isn't it?
Yeah,
So then you have to prioritize, but then I think it's also being clear up front. Actually, I'd love to hear your views, but ultimately I have to make that
yeah,
decision.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And just being clear rather than, it's not a democracy in that way, because again, if you're not clear, then people get upset.
And I find you have to help them understand by rationalizing why you make that decision.
Yeah.
Now, and then you're going to have to deal with the very fact that there are some people who will not like it. There are
Mm.
some people who are very their facial expressions show everything, and you cannot take it personally, and you have to be okay and make the best decision.
So true, Tommy. I'm still working on the not taking it personally bit.
Right? That's the hard part. You're sitting there and you know you have to make a decision, but it's an unpopular decision. Everyone's heard it, but you have five different opinions.
Yeah.
And when you say, we're going to go there, there's usually one or two people who sit there and you just see it all over their face. They're just unhappy about it.
Yeah.
But you cannot take it personally. And you got to realize, I got to make the best decision for this organization, listening to everyone.
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's so true. And also it's a remembering that as a leader, when you are in a position of influence, it is a lonely place. We're not there to be popular. We are there to bring people along and make sure that we're not just unilaterally making decisions. But it's not a popularity context. If we're always worried about what people think about us, then actually we won't be effective in thinking
Yeah.
what's the best for the organization.
And I'm glad you said that. And so, Felicia, I realized that as a leader, you have to be secure in who you are. That Christ put me in this role. Am I going to make mistakes? I sure will make mistakes, but I have to listen to everyone, hear everyone, and make the right mistakes. And if it's a wrong one, let's pivot. Let's work through some of those things. Let's continue to tinker through all these things.
Yeah, true. And to be willing to be humble and apologize and say, look, actually, you know, I made a bad decision in there, but let's see what we can do to make it better. How can we learn from this?
Yeah.
Because we're not always
Felicia,
right.
wouldn't you say sometimes as Asians that could be hard because we're always taught to save face and to not show weakness and to make ourselves, and so admitting you're wrong, admitting, hey, look, it didn't go well, let's regroup and all that stuff. It could be hard. You take it personally.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that plus the fact that as Asians, it's that control thing, and it's also the professionalism. So I don't know about you, Tommy, but I have had to work through the fact that it's not just having a professional face; it's actually being, because then if you think, what does it mean look like to be vulnerable and honest, and you want to do that with your team, but you also want to be professional. So like, how much do
Yes.
you where
Yes.
are the boundaries? And I think as an
Yes.
Asian, that can be difficult too.
Yeah. 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 Another thing that I've always struggled with, and Felicia, I'm not sure, and let me pick your brain on this. I've always struggled as an Asian male or even in America, how to not brag about myself, but share about what I'm doing or organization is doing. I've always been taught, put your head down, work hard, and people will notice and people will reward you. And I had to realize operating in the world sometimes people won't notice you. You won't get the grants. You won't get the money because they don't know what you're doing.
No, no, you're right. And it's very not, it's not part of our culture, is it, Tommy?
No, I don't like it.
No, you're absolutely right. And also as Christians, it's also not part of our culture to
Yes.
put ourselves forward. So we've got, sort of the double things. I suppose as Christians, though, we know it is the Lord that will that oversees it. So nothing's going to be outside of his control. But there is something that we need to step up to still. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that we sit back. Yes, it's so true. And even just learning to do that in a different culture or different cultures is actually tricky, because you're just thinking, well, am I kind of like bragging or boasting? I
Yeah.
need to put my, but I've also learned over the years, Tommy, and we've seen this even with just leaders in whatever organizations, that it's not necessarily about whether you're good or not good, but actually the gifts, and therefore putting yourself forward and leaning in, as Sheryl Sandberg would call it, leaning in and actually
Yeah.
putting yourself forward. We have to do that, don't we? That's just the
Yeah.
way that we have to show our
Especially
gifts.
now since you're co-CEO, you have to talk about your organization. You have to be out there speaking on these things. And sometimes you're just uncomfortable bragging about yourself because it feels like, man, all I'm doing is just brag about how good I am. It's just not your nature. But
No.
then you have to communicate to people what you actually do and the excellence in your work.
Yeah, yeah. And also, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, Tommy, but if God has put us there and he's given us those gifts, then actually we are to use them. And if we think about the bragging and boasting, Paul, the Apostle Paul says about boasting in Jesus Christ and not in ourselves. And actually there is a kind of thing, well, actually, if God has put me in this position, then actually I want to, why am I doing this? So one of the questions I've been asking myself since I've stepped into this role is, Lord, how do you want me to love? How do you want me to serve? How do you want me to add value in this role? And what is your mission for
Yeah.
me in this season? God has definitely put me here and put you there, Tommy, and everyone
Yeah.
else. It's kind of saying, how are we serving? So it's coming with the right mindset, the mindset of Christ, isn't it?
Yeah. Another mindset, I'm not sure if you've had the experience. I talked to one of my dear friends who's a female leader in the tech space from Singapore, lives in San Francisco now.
Mhm.
And so she's on the advisory board of multiple wonderful organizations. And she says, as Asian women, when I walk in, immediately it's usually men. And the first thing they assume, I'm either there to take notes or bring snacks. And
Yeah.
I had to realize in my head, I cannot get insulted right now. I cannot just sit there and say, I can't believe you're thinking and become angry. I have to tell my mind, I deserve a space here at this table and I belong here. I'm going to show you guys what I'm able to do. And she had to change her way of thinking.
Yeah, I know. Yes, there is an added thing, and I think it's even, I think it's a bit more. I think we're not as multicultural yet. I think in some of the places here in the UK at leadership level. And I'm not saying that it's necessarily all right in all other countries
Yeah.
as well. So every country has its different
Oh,
challenges.
yeah.
But yes, you're right, and not to think the question is that what will we take offense about, and in fact, I was just listening to a John Piper sermon on Philippians 2 recently about Jesus, emptying himself, and he was saying the opposite of kind of so the way to empty yourself, and the opposite of that is entitlement. So if we feel that we're entitled in a way that is unhealthy, like just get offended about something happening to us, then we've got the wrong idea. But we need to still say, look, actually, I've been put here because God has
Yeah.
put me here. So
Yeah.
actually, so I deserve that in that God has put me here. So I'm going to step up to it and not take offense where it doesn't help and it creates a barrier. But
Love
it's
it. Love it.
complicated. It's
It
complicated.
is. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you got to work through some of those things, but you also have
Oh,
to know your personality
yeah.
and not take offense to it, in which it becomes hard.
I'm still working through it, Tommy. I think it's going to be a lifelong progress,
Yeah.
process and
Hey,
progress.
talk to me about your work with women.
Yeah, thank you for asking about that. So, just over a year ago, I set up a new initiative with a couple of friends who are equally passionate about work and faith integration called She Sells Purple. And this is to connect and equip Christian women in workplace leadership to make a difference for Christ and to flourish. And the reason why we did this is that we realized that some of our churches don't talk much about work anyway. We talked about
Mhm.
that work faith integration or lack of. They don't talk much about work anyway. They don't talk much about women unless it might be women at home or mothers, and nothing wrong with that, but they don't tend to talk about women at work in that way. And they don't talk about women leaders. And we have many, many women leaders, whether married or single, who actually have got a lot of influence in the workplace. But they're never actually told or kind of shown how they can make that influence for Christ and how they can flourish with the gifts that God has given them, the kind of things you and I were talking about.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
thought, well, actually, there's not a lot happening. There is quite a lot happening in the States, I think, in various guises, but not much happening here in the UK. So we thought, look, we can't find anything happening. Let's just gather a few people from our church spheres and just get the word out. And so far, we've had about 6 gatherings in London, about 30 women who are leaders in different industries, whether it's education, healthcare, law, media, charity. It's amazing. And people have just been so thankful to think, gosh, this is a space where I can really talk about these
Yeah.
real challenges, but also be encouraged.
Yeah. What is it that you've heard or learned that you never thought prior before starting this event?
I think the real hunger from women to be able to talk about the challenges at work with being a Christian and a woman and a leader. So being a Christian, a woman, and a leader is a triple challenge. And so the hunger to say, wow, we didn't even know what we didn't know. And it was
Yeah.
particularly about the work and faith. We didn't really, we just thought it was like we just work and then we go to church and that's our Christian bit. Whereas the work bit, well, we just kind of muddle through or do the best we can, and that's really because our main serving is at church. But I think that kind of like when the penny dropped for people to think, actually, I am really using my gifts, God has put me here, I can make a difference. That was amazing, actually, and it's been more hunger and thirst than we realized.
Very, very good. For those who may not be familiar with it, why purple?
Yes, absolutely. So it was after Lydia in Acts
Hmm.
16.
Hmm.
And Lydia, of course, was a businesswoman who sold purple cloth. And she was probably the first convert in Europe, actually.
Hmm.
And of course, she opened a home to Paul and others, and the church met there. So, really kind of inspiring in the fact that she was a businesswoman, was very
Yeah.
much about integrated faith and work.
Yeah. Felicia, I love the very fact she probably came from Turkey and she was looking for a place of worship, ends up by the riverside, not knowing that Paul and
True.
Silas and Luke was going to show up that day.
Yeah,
And all
yeah,
she did was invite them to stay at her home. It was that invitation to stay at her home. I
yeah.
believe a lot of times she launched that first church in Philippi. And I bet you, with all her other initiatives in Europe, she probably was the funder for a lot of these other churches in Europe during that time.
Yeah, it's an incredible model, either. You're right, you're right. And she was there because God had her there at the right time. But the fact that her hospitality and her generosity of spirit and heart meant that she got to hear the gospel and then thought, what can I do with this? What can I do with the resources God has given me to make a difference for Him? So to open up a home and, like you say, the funding, very likely. Yes.
Yeah. Felicia, now you are a starter, an entrepreneur where you start this women's initiative. You're a co-CEO, you're a medical doctor, you're a wife. What are you hoping? What where are you hoping to end up here in the next year or so, or a long-term vision for where you want to go?
Oh, that's a great question, Tommy. I don't know because this year has been an explosion of the integration of faith and work. We've met so many new people and networks, including like yourself,
Yeah.
and where we can just think, wow, there are people doing this. There are people we can learn from and connect with and be inspired by. And so, actually, at sometime last year, I was doing my husband and I were thinking through actually what's next for the season of life. And we read
Yeah.
Bob Buford's book,
Yeah.
Half Time, kind of think what next for the season ahead. And I kind of wrote a bit of a mission statement for the season. And my mission statement is why I started She Sells Purple, which is to help others flourish and make a difference for Christ wherever they are. And so, actually, whatever that's going to be, whether it's She Sell Purple or whether it's where I am in my organization or as a medic, when I come across people, I want to tell them about actually that where they are is where God has them and that they can flourish and make a difference for Christ and that they can have fullness of life in that way. So, in terms of where I see myself with my husband in 1, 2 years, 5 years' time, well, I think the Lord will show us as He opens up new doors and
Yeah.
opportunities.
And it does seem like he's suddenly opened up all these doors of opportunity as you're wrestling with it. Because, like you said, that role as co CEO started coming with your organization with Lydia, Principles, and Purple. It just all started coming.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like you sat there and wrote out a plan that this is what you're going to do 5 years from ago.
No, no, you're absolutely right. So, but I think it is important, isn't it, as leaders, that we actually do kind of do that work and thinking, Lord, and I usually do it at the beginning of the year. Lord, what were the things about last year that you wanted me to learn? There were lots of lessons learned from last year through various trials. What are the things you wanted me to learn? How do you want me to grow this year? What do I want to have achieved in Christ by the year end, whether it's a spiritual formation or things to achieve. And I think it's good, isn't it, for us as leaders to have goals and to have a
Mhm.
direction that we're traveling in rather than drifting
Yep.
aimlessly.
Yes. But even with the young people who are listening, as much as you have goals and every single step you should take,
Yeah,
you should have a goal. Still be open to open and close doors. Be okay
absolutely.
to pivot. Be
Yeah,
okay to try something different,
yeah.
but still have those goals.
You're absolutely right, Tommy, because the thing is that otherwise we don't leave room for God to work. It may not be
Yes.
God's plan. It might be your plan, but if it's not God's plan,
Yes.
well, that's no good.
Yes.
So we have to be open to that. And thank you for mentioning about the young people as well, because that's very much part of my heart at CMF and also with the She Sells Purple, is to think actually there's a next generation of leaders, there's the next generation of medics and nurses, and they are leaders in society. So it's not just about
Yeah.
healthcare, it's about
Yeah.
the influence they
Yeah.
have in society as people in healthcare, Christians in healthcare. So actually, how do we get ready and pass on the legacy to them in Christ?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I was just at a wedding with my former youth pastor,
Yeah.
and he says to me, Tommy, I am very surprised. that you are working globally as much as you are. I would have never imagined. And I said to Dave, I would have never imagined to. That was never on my radar.
Wow.
And so a lot of times it's just seeing what those opportunities are, is understanding your skills, your passions, your gifts, and seeing those open doors and taking a step forward.
Yeah, so true. How exciting to see that this wasn't where you'd intended, but the Lord had
Never,
brought you here. And the other
never.
thing I was going to say about young people as well, Tommy, I mean, I've definitely flourished because I had someone within my organization who loved developing people. That was his mission, as it were.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
he showed me, the Lord showed me through him the gifts that I didn't know I had. And he kind of pushed me into
yeah,
opportunities and say, no, you do it. Let's see,
yeah,
what do you think? And that
yeah,
gave me confidence and helped me to flourish. And so I
yeah.
want to be able to do that for other people.
Yes. And I love what you just said about this. It's not lecturing and talking down to them. It's helping them to think.
It was great. He asked me questions and he pushed
Yeah.
me in a way that
Yes.
I had to work it out.
Yes. And
Yes.
I love it because, and for all of our Asian or even African guys who are listening to it, we're all geared to honor and respect our elders. And so it's always listen, listen, listen. But
Mm,
it's those two individuals that help us say, why are we doing this way? It forces you to think. Those are the great teachers who lead you on a journey to help you realize what God wants you to do.
exactly. Great questions make all the difference.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Felicia, thank you very much. Especially the very fact that I'm losing my voice. I woke up this morning. I said, I think I'm losing my voice. So thank you so much.
Well, well, thank the Lord that you have got your voice for this podcast.
Yeah,
I want to thank you so much for the opportunity. And I was saying to you, Tommy, that I'm just really praying that all your amazing resources will be used for the glory of God and will really make a difference in people's lives. It could be one or two things that we've said that might really
yeah.
chime or make a difference next time.
Wonderful. Hey, are there any websites, social media, anything? Where can they find more information about you? LinkedIn, all of that?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is probably the best way to connect with me. And we do have a She Sells Purple LinkedIn group at the moment. I'm working, we haven't got a website, but I'm working on sort of how I might get more resources out because I'd like to equip people about the faith and work integration as well, particularly great resources from organizations like yourself, as well as
Yeah.
Keller resources, which have been excellent.
Felicia, I'm not sure, even as I hear you talk, who would have thought that God would use and open the doors for a medical doctor? Then from that point on, started overseeing conferences, now doing all of this stuff that impacts not only the UK, but even around the world. So wonderful, wonderful,
Well,
wonderful
you've given
job.
me that opportunity. So thank you for that, Tommy. Yeah, thank you.
We'll talk soon.
Yes, thanks very much. Have a blessed day. Bye bye.